In the wake of the Orlando massacre, there is a volley of hate-filled rhetoric being fired at Muslims and gays by, of all people, pastors and Christians. Listening to them, you think their church is an Islamic State war room. Hate is a coward's way to deal with a perceived enemy. We justify our fleshly desires by citing the enemy's threats. Christ-likeness and Christian maturity is seen when we refuse to hate those whom the world would give us permission to hate. This is the worst form of worldliness. Evidently, there are some pastors who are quite worldly. No, they don't smoke or chew or run around with women who do, but they do hate, and that is worldliness. A Sacramento, California pastor who was commenting on the Orlando massacre referred to gay men, and he said this, quote, "There's no tragedy. I wish the government would round them all up and put them up against the wall, put a firing squad in front of them and blow their brains out. The tragedy is that more of them didn't die," close quotes. The pastor was asked, well, what about that component of Christianity that says we should love everyone equally? The pastor responded, "The Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible tells us to hate the enemies of God." But did Jesus die for the enemies of God? Did he only die for the so-called nice people, the good people, those who do not sin and are not gay? What is hate? It is the desire to see evil befall those who mean to harm us. Jesus said a different example. We should rather desire their redemption, even as Jesus prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." You see, when we're frustrated and feel helpless in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds, we often hate. Hate is a knee-jerk reaction to a threat we feel we can't handle. The Sacramento pastor is not the only pastor celebrating the massacre. A pastor in Arizona gave a YouTube sermon, which has been removed, and said this, "The good news is that there's 50 pedophiles less in the world." Well, evidently this pastor forgot or didn't want to admit that many sex crimes against little children are committed by heterosexuals. No doubt judicial activism is when a few men in black make same-sex marriage a constitutional right, or government overreach is when the president says the public schools must have gender equality and equal access in school locker rooms and bathrooms, or lose federal funding. No doubt this causes much of our frustration and disappointment. People who hold to traditional values feel overwhelmed when they are forced to accept what they know is morally wrong. But the solution is not hate, and certainly not acts of physical violence. Hate is Satan's bait. It's sad when anyone takes the bait, but especially when pastors do so and claim that they have the Bible to support their actions. In Luke 9, verse 56, Jesus said, "The Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." When pastors preach hate, people say, "You're no different than Islamic radicals," and the charge is valid. They are not behaving like Christians and are unworthy of being called a Christian pastor. Christian author and researcher Joel Rosenberg reports that as Muslims pray and fast during Ramadan, many are having dreams and visions of a man in white. Jesus is appearing to a Muslim family in a refugee camp. He is appearing to a boat of Muslim refugees crossing a stormy sea. Jesus is appearing to bedridden Muslim moms. Jesus is also changing the lives of some gays. The Christian singer and worship leader Dennis Jernigan is a good example. The massacre in Orlando and the comments that are being made by some of those who are leaders in the Christian community should lead all of us to examine our own hearts. Have we done or said anything to encourage hatred towards gays and Muslims? Have we done anything to create the impression that a good Christian is someone who hates? There are times when Christians can and should be angry. In Matthew 5, verse 22, Jesus says we must not be angry without a cause. In Ephesians 4:26, the apostle writes that we are to be angry, but without sin. In Mark 3, verse 5, Jesus was angry, but he was not hateful. Once again, hate is Satan's bait. I am afraid too many of us have taken the bait, and we refuse to repent of our sin.